Hello, Visions. Welcome to this session of the 2025 Virtual Curriculum Fair. I'm joined by Grayson, who will be presenting on Beast Academy today. Grayson, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you for having me. Very excited to talk to you today about Beast Academy. Before I dive into our wonderful program, I'm going to do a little quick table setting. So Beast Academy is created by us, and we are Art of Problem Solving. So we are self-identified math and education geeks, and we specialize in mathematics, but specifically, it's in the name of our company. We specialize in cultivating and fostering what we call 21st century skills in students. We do this through the vehicle of mathematics, but most importantly, it's not just about making students better at math, although if they touch anything that we make, that for sure will happen. It's really more about helping them become better problem solvers, critical thinkers, and creative reasoners, just really stronger thinkers overall. So I'm here today to talk to you about Beast Academy. Beast Academy started as a book series. I have a couple books here with me right now. You can see these. We have kind of an interesting concept in the sense that they are graphic novels. And I will show you how those are embedded into the online program in a little bit as well. And just as a quick note, we just started developing Beast Academy Science as well. So we have all of grade 3 complete and the first half of grade 4. And over the next like 18 months, we will complete all the way through grade 5. So definitely check that out if you're interested. What you see on the screen today is kind of like the entryway into our online component called Beast Academy Online. And um, I'll do kind of like a quick tour through it, but really what I think is most important and really the best way to showcase who we are, what we built, and why we built it this way is to just go through a lesson and do a little bit of math. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask anyone math questions unless you want me to. I'll definitely do that. So for some more table setting here, Beast Academy covers what we call levels 1 through 5. Now, roughly speaking, this does correspond to grade levels 1 through 5, but kind of one of our unique value propositions with what we've made is that we're doing a far more conceptually rigorous while engaging kind of treatment of the kinds of math that students would see in elementary school. So if you take a look at this list of topics, a lot of these things should be familiar to most if you're familiar with what students learn in elementary math. Um, we're going to essentially cover every topic and concept that one would cover in elementary math. However, we're going to go a lot deeper by giving students access to really interesting, thought-provoking, non-routine problems that don't have an intuitively obvious path to solution. We believe in the power of those kinds of problems because in giving them to students, they're not going to answer them. They're not going to be able to answer them correctly just by applying like a memorized set of procedures and then spitting out a correct answer. Instead, they're going to have to think deeply. They're going to have to think critically about where they would start. They're going to have to reflect on that. Why do I think I should start here? How do I know? And then we're going to build all of these skills as we go. In general, because of the little bit more advanced way of the way that we do things, we actually say that Beast Academy is a good fit for students anywhere like ages 6 to 13. So just in terms of like some quick mapping guidance here, let's take right down the middle, Beast Academy Level 3. Beast Academy Level 3 would be a really good fit for like a high interest, high ability third grade student. Beast Academy Level 3 would also be a really good fit for, let's say, a fourth grader who's not necessarily struggling with math, but they're not like, a fast finisher, top of the class, so to speak. And they're just kind of like, they're kind of doing maybe what's asked of them, but they haven't been given an opportunity to push further. And then I would even say that we've seen success with Beast Academy being delivered to students who might even be struggling with mathematics. But if you do have a student like that, I would say that maybe starting in Beast Academy about like 2 levels back from whatever grade level they're in, and that would be a good kind of starting point. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to dive right into some of the math. So I'm going to go into level 3 and I'm going to go to chapter 4, multiplication. What you see before I dive into the lesson here is you're going to see a little beast down here. We call this Beast Academy. And this beast is going to walk their way along what we call this chapter path. This is meant to kind of guide students through the content that we want to deliver to them in a recommended sequence so that they have a linear visualization of progress. At the end of that chapter, they're going to have a little summative assessment. That's optional. You can choose not to do it, but if you do choose to do it, we're basically gauging one, a student's ability to demonstrate that they know the core computational skill. In this case, perhaps multiplying single-digit or two-digit numbers together, maybe even three-digit numbers. But then the back half of that is really going to be where we shine and where other curricula kind of fall short, giving students access to those interesting non-routine problems. So rather than going to the standard stuff, let's go to the interesting non-routine stuff. So Block Mountains is really one of my favorite lessons. I think that this does a really wonderful job of showcasing aesthetically how you can take something as simple and foundational as multiplication and dressing it up so that you have students engaging in things like deductive reasoning and critical thinking and all the other good things that I mentioned. Okay, so this is one of 1,000 lessons in our program. And anytime you dive into one of these lessons, you're going to see a little instruction box that pops up. This is meant to walk students through the orientation of the problems they're going to encounter in the lesson and make sure they understand the setup by giving them a couple no-stakes examples for them to just play around with without it impacting their data or progress or anything like that. So in this concept, this is a multiplication problem that doesn't look like one. So the idea is the block that sits on top of the two blocks below it is going to be the product of those two blocks. So in other words, 4 times 6 is 24. Get to a slightly larger block mountain. To solve this, we would say 5 times 2 is 10, 2 times 1 is 2, 10 times 2 is 20. Okay, easy peasy. Now, there are 8 problems in here, and what I want you to pay attention to is how the problems change and how we're going to be relying on different kinds of skills in order to solve them. Let's take a look at the first 3 problems. The block mountains are growing and the structure of them is the same. And honestly, the way that you would solve them is entirely identical as well. So nothing too earth-shattering at this point. Every problem that we write and the way that we've sequenced them is very intentionally designed because we want to lead students toward these outcomes. So one of the reasons why we're going to start out slow and steady and pretty straightforward is, one, we want students to, again, get some practice with doing the core computational work. Multiplying numbers. So in this case, like 4 times 5 would be 20, that would be 5, that's 100, so on and so forth, right? 2, we want students to develop some early wins and build some early confidence. Yes, our ultimate goal is to get to those higher order problems and to challenge students a lot more deeply than they would otherwise be challenged with other approaches. But you can't throw students in the deep end right away. You have to kind of stair step your way to that and provide the right scaffolding with these levels of learning. And then 3, we kind of want students to think that based on what they saw in the instruction panel, what they know about the lesson, they know they're in a multiplication unit, and what they see in these first 3 boxes, that that's all that they're going to see here, right? So in other words, what we imagine students are going to think problem 4 looks like is probably 5 blocks on the bottom, all with numbers, and you multiply and put those things up top, but not so fast. We're going to flip the script ever so slightly and give them a problem that looks like this. Now, at first glance, this might not look particularly nuanced, but I can assure you there's a lot of pedagogical intentionality that's gone into putting this particular problem at this point in the lesson, at this point in the curriculum. So as I mentioned just a couple seconds ago, we expect that students are going to think there's a row of numbers at the bottom. And then further, they're going to say to themselves, wait a second, why do I have a number up top? I thought I was just doing multiplication. That's good. We want them to have that moment of doubt because ultimately it opens the door for the following thought, which is, well, hold on a second. I was going to multiply the bottom to put the number up top, but I already have that top number. So I guess this is asking me 8 times what gets me there. So it's kind of the inverse of the way that we learned what multiplication is previously. Another way to think of that is this is kind of like division, right? But yet, importantly, we haven't even done division with the students at any point at this point in the curriculum. So now, by virtue of where we've put this problem here and the thoughts that we think students are going to have, we've intentionally placed the student to be the one in the driver's seat of their own learning. In other words, they're the ones, not the teacher, not the parent, that is developing the intuitive ownership of the discovery that multiplication and division are two sides of the same coin, not a fact that's told to them by someone else that they might not understand, but they memorize. A lot of math traditionally is taught that way. It's overly rote, procedural, algorithmic. You can teach students how to do math in that way, and they might even do well on tests and quizzes, but they might not fundamentally understand the meaning behind the calculations they're performing. And if they don't do that, they're not going to be able to answer problems that look like what you'll see in 5, 6, 7, and 8. So let's take a look at those. Problems that look like this, like this, like this, and like this. So this to me is really like a bring it all together capstone Beast Academy type of problem. And again, just to remind everyone, this is what we're going to build third graders to do. So a student looking at this, they might see that little blinking cursor and they'll be like, I know where to start. Okay, 30 times something gets me to 6,000. We know it's 200, but now what? Now it's not immediately obvious as to what you would do next. There's no running and hiding from problems like this. You're really going to have to engage critically. And it's in the process of doing that that you're going to build skills, right? Again, it's not just about creating better test takers. It's about building skills that are honestly transferable beyond math and really beyond school, quite honestly. So when you're looking at a problem like this, we think that this is a valuable problem worthy of students' time, even if they have to sit with it for a while, try 4 or 5 different approaches that all don't work, because there's going to be some reflective and reflexive learning that takes place during that process. Ultimately, they'll find a 6th path that works, and then kind of like the true intellectual joy that a student would experience when they finally figured it out, but they will have learned why, having reflected on their strategy, that what they did worked that time, and now they're that much better prepared to handle even more challenging questions. Just as a fun aside, because we can't help ourselves, if a student got a problem like that correct, that wouldn't be the end of the story with Block Mountains. We have what are called trophy problems in our program. So trophy problems are like super duper challenging versions of the kinds of problems you would see in a lesson. So if a student got problem 8 correct, it would unlock a problem that looks like this. You might spend 10, 12, 15, 20 minutes trying to figure out a problem like this, but we believe that that's a worthy endeavor. Okay, just want to, because I know we only have maybe a couple more minutes until we have to break for questions and things like that. So I'm gonna go back into the lesson and highlight these 2 buttons up here. So let me start with the books first, actually, in case we don't have enough time to get to the video button. So I mentioned previously that Beast Academy started as a book series. And if I don't know if my shared screen takes up the entire screen, but if you can see this, you can see that this is a graphic novel concept. So across those 5 levels that I showed you in the beginning, each of those 5 levels has 4 guidebooks associated with it. We wanted the online program to kind of bring everything together. So the online program has all 20 of those guidebooks embedded in it, just the digital versions, of course. More specifically, what we've done is we've taken that content, we've broken it up into like 5 or 6 page blocks, and we've associated each of those blocks with the 1,000 lessons, such that when you click this button, it's going to give you the recommended reading, if you will, for the lesson at hand. Now, for those of you who have never seen our guidebooks or are familiar with our approach, you might be asking yourself, why does your textbook look like a comic book? And maybe one of the 2 reasons is a little more intuitively obvious than the others. So first reason is we've worked with hundreds of thousands of students over almost 2 decades. And in developing curricula to really train and inspire those kids, we know that it doesn't matter how well designed or well intentioned an approach is. If students aren't excited about doing it, they're not excited about that learning, it's as if you've never made it in the first place. And so we thought to ourselves, okay, well, what better way to inspire a love of math in young learners than to do away with that like standard rote cookbook style approach to math and gave them something far more colorful, far more engaging, far more exciting, a la a graphic novel with interesting storylines, fun problems, funny characters, things like this. So fun, exciting, engaging, check, check, check. Like we feel we've done that. But that's not really the real reason we did it this way. The real reason we did it this way is because everything we do is geared towards those North Stars of 21st century skill development. We want to create better thinkers through the subject of math. And it turns out that when you introduce foundational topics and concepts, as we've done here, in other words, by way of mathematical discourse and collaborative problem-solving dialogue, that's how you get there when coupled with giving students problems that look like this. So the way I could really hammer that point home is with an analogy. So I mentioned that the standard approach to math, the traditional approach, and what that textbook looks like, it's more like a cookbook. Well, the reason I give that analogy is as follows. So let's say I've never baked a cake before, and the reason I want to bake a cake is because it's someone's birthday, but I've never done it. So I would take out a baking book, and I would flip to the chocolate cake section. Maybe that's what I'm feeling that day. And what would it have me do? It would say, okay, a lot of instructions. Get this number of eggs, get this much flour, get this much butter, get this much sugar in these amounts. Check, 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 check. Preheat the oven to this temperature. Check. More steps. And at the end of that process, I get my cake, right? Maybe it's not the most beautiful looking cake in the world, but I get my cake. Most importantly, I never had to think, never had to think once. All I'm doing is following steps as they've been outlined for me. I don't know why those steps are important. I don't know why those ingredients are important. I don't know why they need to go together in those proportions. And so traditionally, math is taught to students, especially young learners, which is why they fall out of love with math at a young age. A lot of kids do, because it's taught to them in that way. And they haven't been given an opportunity to explore the deeper, more creative connections that mathematics can provide. And so what we do is we take that model and we completely invert it and and turn it on its head. So in the pages of our story, the characters are not going to encounter cookie cutter problems that you would have a pre-memorized set of steps that you would apply to get an answer and then move on, much like we did with our cake. Instead, in the pages of our book, the characters are going to encounter problems that look like that. Problems where you can't apply a set of steps. You're going to have to think about it critically. And what that does is this really amazing thing where it opens up an opportunity for these characters to talk to each other. One character looking at that problem might say, I'm not sure how to solve this, but I think we should start over here. Another character hearing that might say something like, I can see why you'd think that, but I don't think that's going to work because, and that's the key. Anything that follows that word because must be by definition an explanation of reasoning. And it's in that repeated explanation of reasoning, whether you're doing it verbally or out loud or in your mind, that's what builds a stronger brain. And so through time, Beast Academy students, their perception of what math is and what they can do in it starts to change. They no longer think of math as a black and white, right or wrong, this or that discipline. Instead, they start to think of math the way a mathematician might, right? For all of the art, the beauty, the nuance, the creativity, and really feeling that joy, as I mentioned before, of like facing down a really difficult problem and not shying away from it because, you might say, I don't know how to do this. No one's taught me. A Beast Academy student is far more likely to lean into a problem like that and say, I don't know how to figure it out right away, but I think I can figure it out. So anyway, that's Beast. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much for presenting, Grayson. I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording at this point, and then we'll go ahead and move into Q&A.